Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, Namaste. Welcome back to the course on Geographic Information Systems. Now let's see about the module 8. I would be speaking about, I'll continue the database systems, but this module is very specifically designed for everyone to understand how do you actually create, maintain, edit, and how well you can use a database. What are the different types of database, how the querying can be done, how basically there are certain issues that you can address when you are creating a database. Though I'll give a very common issues that has to be addressed, but it would be more intact, but it's not the over the queries that you may have during your operations with the database. So let's as far as this, I'll be very much cornered to understand it with MS Access. I'll give you some introduction with the MS Excel, but more ways of how a database can be created, how you can modify in terms of MS Access. So Microsoft Access is one of those very good systems where you can handle your database very efficiently. So there are many other systems, but I would be showing you about the Microsoft Access. So in today's class, we would first just revise what do we mean by a database management system and how a relational database management system works. Then we would look at what is Excel first, then look at what is MS Access, how MS Access, the Microsoft Access is useful for analysis, then planning and designing a database. So how do we plan a database, how do we design a database, what are the necessities that you need in order to design a database. Then we would look at operations, database operations, how will we do a database operations. Then very important concepts of compacting, repairing and encrypting, which may be important. Encrypting is very important in today's scenario, wherein it would help you in storing your database in with much more security. Then the last part is how do you secure your database. So that's also another thing that we have to learn, so that we are up to date with whatever things that we have to build it with the database. Now, so as I previously defined, a database is just a computerized database management system, is just a computerized application that helps you to store, retrieve, analyze, sort and print information that is stored in the database. You have data that is stored in the database or in a form of a database. That application, database management system, is application that can help you retrieve, analyze, sort and print. Okay, and also in case if you have very big database, it also helps you in grouping the data in much easier way. So when you look at DBMS, data is basically stored in a table that looks very similar to a normal spreadsheet. So most of you would have seen Excel, very basic Excel, or let's say a mathematics handwriting book, okay, wherein you have numerical mathematics book wherein you write 1 2 3 4. It's a similar kind of sheet that's there in the database management system. Okay, in columns, heading is the field names and the columns are called fields. When you are handling a database, columns, that when you say columns, these are the vertical boxes that are called columns, whereas rows are called records. These are horizontal boxes. So when you look at a normal spreadsheet, you have something like this, right? If you have a square box, your spreadsheet is something like this. So when you are looking at this, these are called records: record 1, record 2, record 3, record 4 and so on, whereas this is called field 1, field 2, field 3. Okay, so this is how a basic database structure is. Okay, exactly like Excel. If you have seen Excel, it is exactly like an Excel. Excel also is an uh, good a good application in order to create a database. And when you are looking at a relational database management system, this enables user to manipulate data in most sophisticated way. This we have discussed how sophisticated it is, without data redundancy. This is extremely important. I gave an example of an hospital and the records and the police. So that is how it avoids the redundancy. So it gives you different tables, and specific tables have specific connections, only specific people can access it. So that's how it gives you it can easily quickly access the data, and most importantly it removes the data redundancy in your database. So this is achieved how when you look at data redundancy, it is because of the relationship between the sets of data, or it is based on relationship between the data and the sets of data. Okay, the relationship is common field such as a student matriculation number or course number, or when we were looking at that patient, it's a patient ID, which is the common relation, and even the license number can be your common relationship number. That's actually looking at all the entire database. The data is then each stored in is retrieved, updated based on data in the other data set, other set also. Okay, so which means to say that if there is a small change in other set which is reflecting it to your main database, so there will be a change in the entire space if they are dependent. Okay, so just to give you an example of a relationship between a student and courses, this is how the relational database is. Okay, so just a very basic example of how a relationship between a student and course. So you have a course ID that is linked to how many number of students have been enrolled. So then again the course ID is again linked with the metric, which tells you that what is the title, what is the first name, what is the last name, and any other details that of a student that is necessary. Okay, so the course ID is then you can have, again you can have specific a table where again with the course ID and representing number of students. So and what is the average of the class, what is the highest of the class, lowest of the class, all of this can be based on the course ID itself. So this gives you a chain of how relational database management actually works. So let's start with the first application, that is Excel. Most of you would have known, but if you don't know, please just go back, have just Google it out to just see what is a Microsoft Excel. Okay, when I say Excel worksheet, these are basically a worksheets, or it is just I can say it as a mathematical tables. Okay, we can do mathematical, statistical, any kind of analytical issues. It can look at qualitative data, it can hold any number of data into those sheets. There are infinite number of sheets until your virtual memory is almost done. Otherwise you have infinite number of sheets. You can look at storing different data in different sheets, access different data at different point of time. So Excel is one which can give you both quantitative information, visualization, also look at analytical numerical part of analysis of that particular data that you would have collected. Now Excel worksheets are extremely suitable and can be opened as tables in QGIS or any of the GIS softwares. So now Excel, see, once you have collected data, you can put either in Excel or Microsoft Access or in any of those sheets which can actually handle. Even you have lot of open office stuff also. For example, when if you have an open office stuff, that's also stored as similar to that of an Excel, and is a good option alternative to what Excel is. So now once you have stored it in the form of Excel, so you have collected data from the field. Maybe let's say that one of my student has gone and collected all the temperature data from the field. So he used the laser temperature sensing gun to collect some of the surface temperatures. So he comes back. Once he comes back, he knows because of the GPS location, he knows where exactly he has collected the data, and also he knows certain attribute information that he would have collected, and also using those sensors he would have collected the temperature data also. So now he comes back, he puts it in the Excel sheets. So you have the name of the place, you have temperature sense, the lat long, xy values, and any other attribute stuff that is corrected. So that is nothing but a sheet. It is just like your paper that is printed in a number of boxes. So most functions that involve changing the file will work as far as Excel is concerned, that is sorting, querying, etc. Tables cannot be changed or edited once it is performed. Okay, so when you look at Excel file, there are certain requirements for it to be in order if you want to import it as as attribute data into your database. Now the first row must contain field headings with a legal field name as defined earlier. So I'll tell you what are those legal field names. So when I say field names, these have to be in maximum of 13 characters, and this characters, and this field name cannot have only numerical, or only it can have words, it can have partly numerical, partly words, and these headings have to be sufficient length so that it is easily identifiable. So you cannot have no blank rows or formulas that should be used. Each column should contain only text or only numbers. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you are defining a data, if it's a qualitative data, put it in qualitative form. If it is quantitative data, put it in quantitative form, but make sure that either it is number or it is text. You cannot combine both. Okay, if you are finding out whether it is a red or a blue color that you have looked at in the field in different locations, now it should be red should be 1 and blue should be 0, or it should be R or B. Okay, so either one of these contexts has to be used when you are actually entering into the database. It is helpful for each column to be formatted as text or numeric. So keep that in mind. Normally you can format it basically when you are looking at that particular thing. So when the Excel sheet looks something like this, so you have columns that are formatted as text or numeric. So if you look at this, these are all numeric. This is the field name, okay, both in X and Y. And if you look at these are most of them are numeric forms. Okay, so you cannot have in the first line, that is the first column and the first row, you cannot have any blank lines, no formulas. Basically you cannot use a formula in the first lines. Okay, and try to avoid having formulas here, so that and if there are certain formulas, it can be worked out in other Excel sheet and copy pasted as numerals here. Okay, and always have a legal field name. Okay, don't use field names that may not be more understandable. So, and when you normally enter, I would suggest that most of them enter it in the form of a decimal degrees. So whenever you go to field, normally you collect the data, or when you are looking at any of the applications, it is degree, minutes and seconds. So if you have to convert it into decimal degrees or degree decimals, so it is as simple as this. You have a degree, so add minutes by 60 plus seconds by 3600. So combining all this is nothing, gives you degree, the same reading in a degree decimals. So I would suggest that most of the things that would be entered here would be in degree decimals. It would rather give you more effective way of usage of that database rather than any of the other forms where there may be certain confusions when you are actually picking up the data from the database. Then workbooks and worksheets. So this is concepts that Excel uses. So when you look at this, if you look at this is one of the Excel sheets. So these are number of fields. This is the field 1, field 2 and field 3, and when you are looking at this, I have just taken this as an example. Okay, so this is if you look at this, all of these there are 3 different fields, but if you look at here, there are 3 sheets. Normally when you open Excel sheet, normally in the previous versions it used to be 3 different sheets would open, but in the newer versions 2 sheets open at a time. Okay. So, when you look at, these are called as worksheets 1, worksheet 2, worksheet 3. Okay. This entire book is called as nothing but an workbook. Okay. So, whatever you have, this is called as a workbook. Now, when you look at Excel, Excel actually stores either in two formats. You have the older format, which is .xls, and the newer format is .xlsx. Okay. Other than that, you can even store it in .csv form. Okay. So, comma separated value format, which will be much easier for importing in many of the GIS softwares. Okay. By default, there are three name sheets, as I said. There may be one or more named worksheets. So, always I would suggest everyone who start looking at worksheets, you are storing data. For example, the first data is about different recording stations, the next the worksheet is about temperature, next the worksheet is about rainfall. So, keep the name of the worksheet much easier, because when you open your application, okay, and try to import these worksheets, it when you open up that workbook, it doesn't take in all the data that is there in the workbook. It takes worksheet by worksheet. So, which means to say that if there is a worksheet by name rainfall, only that worksheet is considered for your analysis first. Next, you can retrieve the temperature worksheet. Similarly, so it is easier if, rather than having sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, which you may not remember as whether it is temperature, rainfall data. So, it is better to always rename the worksheet so that it is easier to access. GIS software can only open one worksheet at a time, that is what I explained. And when you are opening a workbook, it is like normally like a folder. So, in a folder you can use one file, you can open one file at a time, okay, and select a single worksheet. Okay. So, I hope everyone has understood how and data is stored in Excel, and how we can actually access the worksheets. Now, let us go into Microsoft Access. I have just given a small introduction to Excel. When we start looking at data, in one of those classes, you may look at how do you use and extract data for your analysis. So, using an Excel sheet. So, let us look at MS Access. So, Microsoft Access is a relational database application in Microsoft Office Professional. So, if you have used any of the Office, that's Office after Office 2003, the Microsoft Access is extremely developed as a compact relational database management application in the Microsoft package. So, before we explore ourselves, we should understand that database, and also we should review some of the very basic database concepts. So, otherwise you will not be able to understand Access. So, in case you guys have have forgotten some of the database concepts, what is a relational database, how it works, etc., though I have given an introduction in this class, please go back, just have a look at that particular video, and then understand how a Microsoft Access works. It will be easy for you to just organize it in a much better way. A database is an organized collection of information, okay, so, or data that is processed as information. A telephone directory is a good example of a database. So, most of you, at least in my people have seen what is a telephone directory. I do not know whether with the advent of mobile phones, if you guys have looked at what is a telephone directory, but if you can come across, please look at a telephone directory. It has a extensive information. So, with just a telephone you could have tracked a person's address and a lot of other issues, but it is you should appreciate the way the telephone directory used to be built. It is extremely good in terms of having a collection of telephone numbers. Even today you can access a telephone directory using Google search as B2B. If you just search, you would probably find the telephone numbers of your house and also your friend's house. So, that is extremely good. So, if you can really get an hold on what the old telephone directories, you will love looking at it, because it's one of the best databases that anyone can come across. So, this is a very good practice of developing a hard database that used to be there earlier. Now, it is more of having a digital data. Okay. So, when you are looking at your computer has many applications which each and every day accomplish your particular work. So knowing when access instead of Excel is important is very necessary when you are looking at the database point of view. Okay, so not that every time you need to take up Excel in order to have a database ready, or nor you should always take up access for your database. So look at why you need access and why you need Excel. Now I did show you that Excel is one of those applications which can actually populate all your data that you have collected from the database. Now once you have populated that in the Excel cannot really develop a database engine by default. So it cannot look at the database system, it cannot look at the database management, whereas Access can look at the database management. So you can have data in Excel, whereas looking at the database management can be done by Microsoft Access. So that's why you have two applications instead of one. Okay, so when you are looking at the database, the most important is store a collection of information or processed information or collection of data. So that is exactly why you need Access. Okay, so for example, you have student attendance system, student marks, library systems, customer records, invoicing systems, product inventory. So when you are looking at all of these, so whether it is students attendance system, library system, invoicing, or any of these things, the main emphasis is on data collection than calculation, right? If it was on calculation, for example, student marks, yeah, if you want to store let's say there is two things. If you are just storing it as student marks is, okay, student marks is 65 overall on 100, let us say. So this is a overall marks, you don't need to do any calculations. But if you are looking at the midterm exam, then the take home exam, then you have the final exam, then you have presentations, surprise tests, so all of these have certain marks associated with it. So you want to calculate the final marks out of all of these, then you need an Excel, whereas here it is only collection of data, which student has how much marks, that's all. So that's the difference between an Excel and an Access. Fine. So that's Access is more of a data collection and management, whereas Excel is for calculations. It can also do the collection part, but its emphasis is more on calculations and maintenance. Okay. So when you are looking at database, most of the databases can perform statistical calculations by themselves, but it doesn't calculate as fast as a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet. That is why you need Excel. Okay, so if you want to calculate basically or look at statistical information, then you need Excel. Otherwise your Microsoft Access would help in database management. So the next question is, okay, so now I understand what Access is more of collecting data, then final data, then storing it in the database, etc. But Excel is more of the calculative stuff, like a statistical analytical issues that it can look at. But again, when do we use Access? So now you know the difference between two softwares, but you don't know when do you use Access. So you need to use Access when you want to organize data into manageable related units. Okay, so enter, modify and locate data. For example, you have a lot of information, that is a lot of information, processed information, and lot of data that you have collected. So you have to actually enter it, modify it, locate it. When you are looking at Excel, you will not be able to locate the information that is or relational information that is already existing. Whereas when you are looking at Access, it is more of how do you enter, how do you modify, how do you locate data. Locate data is extremely important in terms of Microsoft Access. Then extract subsets of data. So now I give you an example of a hospital and then a policeman. So policeman doesn't need the details of that what a doctor needs, whereas a doctor doesn't need the details of what the policeman is. So you need to have a subset of data. So create subsets of data can be easily done using Access. So the specific data user will be given only certain access, and others will be curtailed with the access of those data which are unnecessary. Okay, Then create custom forms and reports. This is a very important point. At the end of the day, you need custom forms, custom reports in order to generate the final output. Then look at automating common database tasks, which is very important in today's world. It's automation is the major important aspect when you are looking at the task. When you have a huge database, it is not easy to maintain. Instead, if it can automate and look at the entire database, it's good. That's why you need to use Access. And today's if you look at the Microsoft Office 2019 is extremely useful in terms of giving you good software package in terms of Microsoft Access. Then you can create graphs. When I say graphs, even Excel can do it, but you can create it more visually linked to the data that is running behind. Then you can create your own database application. This is very important. This is what it majorly differs from Excel. You can create your own database application, complete the custom menus, then look at the dialog box and the command button. So most importantly, you can build an overall application in terms of user interface for an user who would be using that data and the database effectively. Then when you are looking at the entire Access database, you have different components of an Access database. In Access, the term database refers to a single flat file, okay, or a single file that contains a collection of information. So each Access database consists of the different objects. When you look at objects, it can be tables, it can be queries, it can be forms, it can be reports, pages, groups, macros, modules. Okay, I'll come to each of these. I'll show you how you access each of these in your Microsoft Access. I'll give you some examples of it. So when you look at pages and groups, will not be looked at when you are looking at this. We'll look at what all these things mean, but I am not going into details of what you mean by different pages, how do you maintain groups, how do you populate group, how the groups are combined. So I'll just give you a flavor of what a table means, what a query means, how do you create a query, how do you create a table, what are different forms, why you should use a form, queries, etc. So but I would not go into details, dive details into pages and groups, okay, but we would look at different components. So when you are looking at Excel, so if you open up Excel and click on create a new database, so this particular thing opens. So once you say you create a new database, you have to provide it with a name, okay. So once you have provided with the name, you get this particular interface. So if you click on this, it will give you different parts of an application, okay, whether you want to look at the contacts, you want to look at issue, you want to look at task, you want to look at users, etc. Then the next tab is nothing but tables. This is it actually is exactly similar to that of an spreadsheet or an Excel sheet, and it stores all the data or information. You can see just behind here there is a number of columns, number of rows that is stored. If you go and see here, there is one column and one row. So this is where your data is actually shown. This gives you the tables, okay. So the next thing is macro. Macro is as similar as that in an Excel. So macro is used to automate your common database actions, okay. So these are based on very specific command and developed by the users. So macros are extremely very good tools that Microsoft has in terms of its applications, and the same macros have been embedded into Microsoft Access just to automate data, I mean data maintenance, data I mean if there is certain calculation that has to be done and any other issues in the database that can be handled time to time, macros works on it. Then you have query. So query is one of them. For example, when you populate your entire database, let us say that there is a class of students. I have the student's name in my I mean in the rows, and columns gives me their height, their probably their different classes, different marks, for example 10th marks, 12th marks, and their bachelor's marks that they would have, or undergrad marks, okay. So all the 3 marks. Now I want to look at who in this particular student pool has scored the best, is consistent overall, or has been scoring in much consistent way. So in that time I use the for this this particular thing called as query. Okay, so what does query do? It extracts data from the table. So the first thing is, if I say if the query is 10th marks equal to 12th marks equal to the B marks, or in the range of these marks, okay, then say it is, yeah, it is, let's say, group 1. Otherwise, if it's more or less, or it is too less, make it group 2. If it is not equivalent very variable, then make it group 3. That is my query. So that queries enable us to view fields from more than one table in the same record. So if you have 10 different tables in a relational database, so you can extract all the information from those by just the usage of query. Only thing is that you should know what are the different fields or columns that are there, or the attribute information that is already embedded into the database. The next thing is forms. This displays the data from the table or query based on the user defined in the custom format. Okay, it is based on the user, the how I need, what kind of data output I need. That is how the forms are displaying. So the forms enable us to view, edit and print data, basically edit and print data. Okay, a form can display information from more than one table or a query. It can, that's what most of the database operations do. So when you look at the next tab, it is reports, that is here. Okay, so what does basically reports do? These display and prints data from the table or query based on user defined custom format. Okay, again it's based on the user, so everyone has their own way of printing it. So it is based on the user on how the this particular thing has to print it. Only one very different thing is from the format forms is that report cannot be edited. It will be in the logged format and it will be printed as it is. Reports can contain information for more than one table or queries. You can have any number of queries. All queries will be processed based on the availability of information, and that will be given you as an output. Okay, so there is no limit in today's context of computing. There is absolutely no limitations of queries, nor limitations of time, whereas previously you could have got something as timed out and certain errors. But in today's computing capacity, absolutely there is no rules or limitations in terms of this. The reports also again are automate complex operations that macros cannot perform. You can again have this. Then modules are procedures written in Visual Basics for application programming languages. So you will have different modules for developing that particular thing. That is, module is somewhere here. Okay, so you can look at how this can be changed. Then you have planning and designing of a database. So when you are looking at planning and designing, the first thing you have to before you create any database is that first thing is plan it. On first, why are you building a database and what purpose that it should serve. Maybe after a few years or few months it may take a different shape, but when you are initially planning, look at a long term goal and look at how you have to develop the entire database. The time taken to design will be the time spent when you create and maintain the database. So when you actually design the database very nicely, you need less time to maintain it, or maybe even alter it. But when you are if you don't take a time in designing the database, then your maintenance time would be extremely high in terms of when the database is in real use. The focus should be basically on data, the people who use the database and the tasks. So the first, what data you are storing, how the people will look at the data, what are the different groups of people who will be using that database, and finally what are the tasks that may be performed on this database. So you have to look at it very carefully. Okay, without looking at this, don't ever create a database. Okay, so when you are if you want to create a database, there are certain key steps. First thing is analyze the existing database. Normally when you have to convert it in a digital database, you will normally have a manual database, right, in the form of registers, books, etc. So what you have to basically do is first analyze the existing database and understand what are the data that are stored in different databases, then take it forward. So look at people's informations. For example, look at different users, different people who will be looking at that particular database information, and in case they need certain modifications that has to be done when you are creating a database, look at it. So plan it, then review the database tasks to be performed, such as weekly reports, data exports, sorting, data entry, analysis. So most of these things has to be there when you are looking at your today's scenario of developing a database and with daily routine. After you identify your data storage and retrieval needs, so you need different kinds of data storage, different ways of retrieval. So based on how you need to store your data, how do you want to retrieve it, each and every data has to be separated into groups of common information. Okay, then each of these groups will be different tables. Okay, so or different worksheets. Fine. So once you have created these different worksheets, you are almost ready to start working on a database management system or developing a database management. These are the first steps of looking at how do you create a database. Okay, then when you are determining the types of information that has to be stored in each table, it may be like a student table, which may need its matriculation number, his or her address, date of birth, scoring information, telephone or contact number of the parents, etc. So these categories of information in the tables are called as fields. So which means that every worksheet will have a huge number of fields when you have a data. Then look for a common elements among tables or workbooks. So you should look at which are the common elements. So these are called as key fields or key worksheet fields. Okay, so when you are looking at this key worksheet, once you have understood what are the key worksheet fields, which is actually connecting different worksheets, then look at designing forms and reports. What kind of designing you have to do, what are the forms that are necessary, how the reports have to be printed, is there certain format or certain styling that is necessary. Then determine the criteria for queries. So there may be certain queries which may not be in bound to your data. So look at what is the upper bound and the lower bound of those queries, how the query has to be done, is there certain constraints in your data. So mention those constraints, put those constraints in terms of non-queryable constraints. So all of these has to be looked at. Then consider automating common database tasks, such as executing a query and printing a report, weekly report, monthly report, etc. Make it more automatic than making it more manual, because when this database is huge, it may be difficult for anyone to locate and print particular data. Instead, if it's automated, it's much easier. And most importantly, look at the data security issues. In today's world, most of it is a data security issue. So look at most of backup policies. So where you are backing up, are the policies relevant to you? Are the policies is really good in terms of your data storage and data maintenance? So look at how you store the data, develop policies of data. Okay, so data sharing, if there is there, every company has its own policy of data sharing and network access. So look at the policies. For example, when you would have seen in some of these slides, have adapted some of the material from some of the very big universities. So those materials have their own policies of data sharing. So that particular data sharing has to be given certain credits, which you would have seen that it is adapted from so and so place. You could have seen the lower footer. So that is how the policies has to be looked at. And finally, the most important is network access. How good is your network access and how much data it can actually handle over a period of time. Then how do you basically create a database? That's I did say that you have to just click on this file. Okay, in the older system it may be very different. This is Access 2019, so you have to just go to your open your double click on Microsoft Access. So once you open it, so click on new and you can see a blank desktop, or if you have been connected to the internet, you can see a huge number of different applications that can be done. Microsoft has populated it with huge number of applications, pre-formatted application databases, so you can even use those databases. And yeah, and basically the older databases used to be stored in as MDB format. Now the latest version is .accdb, okay, access database .accdb. So if you have given this name as a student.accdb is the extension that it will store your database into. Okay, so once you have done, now you can start looking at this is how your Microsoft Access looks. So you can start looking at adding tables, adding objects, adding information. So you can start populating your Microsoft Access or your database. Okay, so now once you have created your database, you have already populated your data into a database, there are certain things that you have to maintain a database. It means to say that the first thing is backing up your database. That's where the maintenance comes into effect. Like most of the computer data is prone to any issues, or maybe due to the issues with the computer or the aging system. So they may be prone to losing critical data. So always back it up. I would prefer if it's a huge database which is altering every minute, maybe backing every 6 hours, 8 hours, or even a day, or backing up it if it's not very critical database, or it's not that database which is used frequently, then probably backing up weekly or monthly is extremely useful. And only thing is that it is easy, because it databases that here in the access part, it is stored as objects and are kept as one file and not as separate files. So it's very easy to back up, even with your Microsoft Cloud, which is easy, or OneNote cloud can easily store it in much faster way. Then compacting a database. So this another term that is normally used when the people are using the database in their daily routine. When you have to compact a database, first thing is you cannot compact a database when you are actually using it. You have to close the database. So how do you do it? Choose tools, database utilities, compact and repair database. So the database to compact from the dialog box appears, whichever database you want to do it. Then select a database file to compact and click compact. So specify the name, drive and folder for the compacted database. Compacting is pressing it. So if it is a 10 MB, so you want to get it into 1 MB, so you are compacting it. So then click as save. Okay. There may be certain due to certain operations while saving, while maybe power out or any of the issues, there may be repairing of that particular database file is necessary. So it can be used from the data repair of a damaged databases. So it is just if you go into the repair, as I previously said in the previous menu, go to repairing and just simply choose it as okay. Access repairs the most of the damaged files. So if not all, so it's most of the damaged files can be repaired. So when you look at repairing, it may be your file is damaged, it may be because of some or the other way, it may be because of saving, storing, or maybe your system the way it is there, or the hard disk. So it may be anything, or it may be not even shutting down properly, so unexpected shutdown. All of this gives you a corruption issues. So that can be repaired using Microsoft Access. So 90% of the cases, most of the database is repaired. There are certain databases, if it cannot be retrieved, then it may fail in repairing the databases. Encrypting a database. So now in today's scenario, you would have heard of encrypting all your information. Yes, it is extremely important if there is a confidential information that has to be stored. Okay, so you can consider using the encrypting as one of the measures. So encrypting renders it unreadable by the text editor or any utility program except the Microsoft Access database. So it has to be the same Access applications with certain values that it can open up that particular database to run. Okay, only Access can read your data. Encrypted databases are slightly slower, okay, you can decrypt the database anytime you need. Okay, you don't need to worry about it, but you can decrypt anytime. But encrypting and keeping and storing in the database is always safe when you have a lot of confidential information or confidential data that has been stored. Okay, so if you want to encrypt and decrypt, these are the different ways. First thing is you close the database, come to the main menu of access, then choose tools, security, encrypt or decrypt the databases. So once you have encrypted it, you can store it in that particular format, that the encrypted format, and just say okay. If you want to decrypt, it's the same thing that you have to follow. Come back to that the particular tool, then look at decrypt, and you can decrypt the entire database. And final thing is securing a database. Securing means you have to put in certain information without which that information you cannot access that database. It's just like your fingerprint password, fingerprint or your password to access your mobile phones. Similarly, we have to secure our databases. Anyone with a copy access to your could decrypt an encrypted database. So that's why encrypted database, if you haven't if you just have an access version, same version of the access, if you have an encrypted database, just plug in, and once you start decrypting it, you can decrypt the entire database. So in order to avoid this, you can even secure your databases. Okay, so encryption, that is with the password protection, offers extremely good security. There are various ways of breaching this password, but as of now, that's the best way. So put up the best passwords which cannot be breached. Okay, there are two ways to secure your database: password and user level security. User level security is normally allows you to create users with password. Only those users can access that particular database with other password with certain levels of information. The users are organized into groups who share certain rights and privileges. Only those privileges, with those only privileges they can use it. They cannot have an access to everything. You have for example, if you have looked at your I mean company data sheet, or it may be your college, they certain software, certain things are only given to you, whereas administrative thing is not administrative access in your system is not given to you. In case you have the certain applications are not working, so you send in a letter to the computer administrator, or you request your teacher to help you out. So the teacher logs in as administrator, unlocks it, only then you will be able to look at it. So only certain users have certain privileges, but the administrator will have the overall control, or the database creator will have the overall control of the database. Okay, so these permissions are used to control the entire database objects. The easiest way to secure a database is specify a password for each databases. So that is the best way to look at it. Okay, so these are some of the steps that you have to use it. Just open a database, open security tab, then click in the password text box, add a password. So verify the password again and close it. So your database would be secured enough. Only thing is that if you forget your password, you will never be able to access the database again, even if you want to. So please remember that password whatever you have stored. So but I would suggest providing some common passwords in order to look at it. So in summary, we looked at we started with our class with just refreshing what you mean by a database management system, how do you actually look at a relational database. Then we looked at what is Excel, how Excel can be a good quantitative, analytical, statistical sheet that can hold data. Then we looked at Microsoft Access and how do you build a data, what do you mean by objects, what do you mean by fields. Okay, objects are those which are in the row informations. Okay, fields are in the column information. These are more of attribute information, whereas these are attributes in rows. Okay, so then we looked at how you store and maintain a database. Finally, we ended it with how do you encrypt a database, how do you encrypt and secure a database, which is extremely important in today's scenario. So we have looked at this, and in the next class we will look at more of the database aspects and look in more details of how we handle a database. Okay, till then, have a nice time. Thank you.